Welcome to today's training. It'll be Fall 2 Reporting and Certification. I'm Nathaniel Holmes. I'm joined by...
I'm Kyron Pagulayan. Good morning, everyone.
And today's training, we're going to cover the submission requirements, certification errors, and the reports associated with the Fall 2 data collection. This training was created for data coordinators, those of you doing the routine and daily maintenance of CalPads, and it's also beneficial to those of you who are new to CalPads. However, if you haven't taken the full sequence of training, some of the concepts may be a bit too advanced and go over your head a little bit, but you can always refer back to this training as you gain experience. If there are any advanced users or experienced users in today's audience, some of the concepts may be a little bit novice for you as you are advanced and experienced. However, hopefully we'll introduce some new things to you with the new reporting requirements for the course section and those that facilitate assignment monitoring. But as always, if you can share your experience with the group through the chat box, that would be greatly appreciated. So here's a wireframe of the training, and we are going to be covering what's highlighted in the orangish color, and in bold is the reporting and certification training. There has been an advanced version of this training for the experienced users that's just being finished up, being recorded and produced, so that should be out by the start of next week. And there are a series of data population self-paced trainings by each file type that are available on YouTube and in Bridge.
After today's training, we hope that you should be able to identify, the staff, course, and post-secondary data that has to be submitted to CalPads as part of the Fall 2 collection. You should also be able to determine the requirements of each of the student and staff members and the course that should be reported, and be able to perform the submission and approval process. So basically how to submit files, how to look at your certification reports, click on the approval button, and be able to resolve any of your certification errors. So we'll first discuss an overview of the Fall 2 collection. What are the general information you need to be aware of as part of your submission process? And then we'll go into the details of each of the file types. And we'll try to resolve some of the certification errors as part of our demo, and also be able to review reports and then wrap up.
So let's start with the overview, discuss some key concepts and background information. The Fall 2 data is used for a variety of reasons. Locally, we use the staff course data to create our SARCs, our School Accountability Report Cards. We also use this data to meet state and federal reporting requirements. The Every Student Succeeds Act, the U.S. Department of Office of Civil Rights, and then the CTC. Some of the key things that we are responsible for in reporting this data is to meet and monitor our legal obligation to EL students by reporting the services that we provide them, as well as ensuring that every student gets the appropriate instruction by the CTC's assignment monitoring, where they compare the credentials of the staff members to the course standards that are reported.
So to successfully report data to CalPads and also be able to certify, let's go back and revisit some of the basic requirements. So first of all, you need to have the roles added into your accounts. So when submitting data, you have to have all of these data population roles. You have your staff search to be able to search online in CalPads, and then the specific edit and view roles for each of the file types that are required to be submitted in Fall 2. You also have to have the Fall 2 reports to be able to verify that all the data that you submitted is accounted for on the reports. And then, of course, we have CalPAS documentation that is always helpful. You have the user manual, the CalPAS code sets, which provides descriptions of each of the codes that are available, and then the file specifications form, which provides conditions when each of the fields are required, the error list, which you should be using when troubleshooting submission and validation errors or certification errors, the data guide for the business rules surrounding follow to submission, the valid code combinations, which is really useful this year, especially with our new codes and additional fields, and the retired course mapping guide. If you've been reporting CalPAS in prior years and have been using old codes, this is your go-to guide to the suggested new courses that you should be using.
So let's talk about what information is reported in Fall 2. And so this is always a good time to pause and allow those of you who already know to share in the chat. Not so much the file types, but generally what information is reported in Fall 2. What are we getting from this file types, if you would be so kind? All right, thank you. We see great answers in there. We see staff assignments, teacher data, courses, course enrollment, teaching experience, course type, students per course. That's exactly correct.
Emma has a good point too. Who is teaching what? So, which leads us to some specific changes this year.
Right. And so as you know, we're collecting staff demographics and assignments about certificated teachers and people services, course enrollment, about the course sections that are provided on Census Day, the English learner services that are provided in those course sections to the students enrolled on Census Day, and new this year is the post-secondary status results for students who were completers, students who were completers last year at the end of the 18-19 school year. And so we just want to emphasize that this collection comes from a myriad of sources. You can't rely solely on your student information system, right? Because it's not solely specific to the students. You're going to have to rely on your student information system and your human resources. You're going to have to pull in the human resources, curriculum, and school site staff for several different categories, right? So your course information, the curriculum department will have to provide you information about your state courses, state course codes, the UC-CSU approved courses, which courses are independent study and distance learning.
And then you also have to coordinate with your human resources with regards to collecting data regarding staff demographics, staff assignments, and the staff members' FTE. And for specific group of students, you also have to coordinate with your special ed with regards to instructional level in the courses, just to identify what courses are specific to special ed. You also have to work with your English learner staff to be able to identify those students who are ELs and what courses are providing EL services, and also the credentials that those teachers have if they're EL services credentialed.
Thank you, Kyron. And then before we proceed, there is a question in the chat box from Ben. And the question is related to the previous slide. Are we just reporting previous year's CTE completers only and not concentrators? And Ben, That is
That
correct.
is correct. This is in reference to the PSTS or post-secondary status file. You only report PSTS records for students who completed high school and who were CTE completers at any point during those 4 years of high school.
And so the key is the students have to have exited school.
Yes, in
And
the
that-
18-19.
And so that would make them CTE completers. Previous documentation included both completers and concentrators, but recently it was updated to specify just the completers. And again, that's because they have to have exited school. A student can be reported as a concentrator throughout their high school career, regardless of grade, if they're taking CTE program courses. So that's why that distinction was made. And so here's the Fall 2 data submission, and what we really want to emphasize is the relationship of the file types. So the SDEM, or the staff demographic file, will provide the seed that will allow us to report staff assignments and then teachers in course sections. The course section provides the course section ID in conjunction with some other fields that will relate the student course enrollment to the course section, right? And then from Fall 1, represented by the file types or the names over on the right, is the enrollment file, the SSID enrollment. That's used to establish the student's seed, which is going to be used in the student course section enrollment to identify the individual student, and then associate their student information, the student program, and the student English language acquisition. But one thing that's key that may not be represented clearly is the student enrollment also designates the school in which the student is enrolled at, which is where we would expect the School of Course Delivery in the student course section and the course section to be, and then the School of Staff Assignment for the teacher providing the course. So there's an interwoven relationship between all these file types that I think many of you who are experienced know, and those of you who are inexperienced are going to soon learn. So we're going to report staff and courses for Fall 2, and those staff and courses are those who are active on Census Day.
October 2nd.
Those students are going to be primary, short-term, and secondary enrolled students. Notice that enrollment status 50, private school, is not included. So just keep that in mind.
And then with regards to post-secondary students reported, as we've mentioned earlier, for this year's PSTS collection for Fall 2, we only need you to report students who completed high school and were CTE completers at any point during their high school year, meaning they completed a CTE pathway. It's not just about finishing a capstone course, right? Just a clarification. And then, of course, we also, if you have data with regards to students who were participating in the California Partnership Academy program, you can voluntarily submit that for the 19-20 year. However, that's not being tracked right now.
And so let's take a minute and see who of you out there know the order of the Fall 2 files. So if you could just real quickly put it in the chat box. I see some familiar names, and I know that many of you do know the order.
Okay.
Thank you. Karen started it off with the SDEM. That's great. Kelly just knocked it all out, right? She got the previous student information included, then the Fall 2 sequence. Yep, so Beth, yep, she's a veteran, she knows. But Robin Odell, thank you very much. She has it all complete. And so let's go to the next slide. For Fall 2 specifically, highlighted with the dark green color at the bottom, 5 through 9, is staff demographics, staff assignment, course section, and student course section. and then post-secondary status. Now, the staff demographic, the staff assignment, the course section, student course section have to be reported in sequence. They have to be submitted and posted prior to the submission of the subsequent file. Post-secondary, which is 9, is not related to these files, and in fact, can be submitted at any time.
Independently, yeah.
Yep, like Tyron said, independently of the other files. However, most of you might have just got your surveys and may not have the information to report the post-secondary. So in fact, it most likely will be the last file submitted. Something else that we want to point out is that there is a requirement for the student program file this year, and that's because of the LIT program. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the training. But if you have not reported your language of instruction program records, they are required for Fall 2, and it becomes a requirement. Now, there were questions in the chat about which files are full replacement. And so we've highlighted every file that's full replacement in orange: staff assignment, course section, student course section, and post-secondary. And this is a great time for Kyron to explain what full replacement processing is.
Full replacement is just basically overwriting an existing records in CalPAD. So, like, let's say, for example, the staff assignments, if you submit a staff assignment with 100 staff records, and then you follow it up with just one staff record for the same school, CalPADs will overwrite all of your 100 records. So there are operational keys that CalPADs look at to determine if a record has to be overwritten or not. So you have to look at the CalPADs file specifications document to determine those specific fields. But in general, that's how full replacement files are. Records get overwritten if the second file submitted or the third file submitted matches the same operational keys of those prior records submitted in CalPADs.
Thank you, Kyron. And so what we want to represent here is to show you that the 4 files that we've always submitted prior to this year for Fall 2, so we're excluding the PSTS, but the staff demographic, the staff assignment, the course section enrollment, and the student course section enrollment will all be used for assignment monitoring purposes. So we don't want to place particular emphasis on any one file. The course section has had a lot of changes to it, but it's no more important than the staff demographic, the staff assignment, or the student course section. So you want to make sure that all the data that you submit this year is as accurate as possible. And so here are some important dates for Fall 2, right? The data is reflective of Census Day. And what that means is, even though we're in January, and even though you're going to be certifying this data in March, most likely, we're looking back to October 2nd. It's going to be the students that were enrolled in October 2nd, the course sections that were provided on October 2nd, right? So we could be in the second semester or the third quarter, but we're looking back to probably what is the first quarter and the first semester for many of you. The snapshots have begun as of the 7th of this month. So they're currently processing. If you're submitting files, you can be looking at reports, resolving errors. And then the certification deadline is at the end of March. And this is significant because there's going to be no amendment window. They're not going to push this date back because it's pushed back as far as it can be pushed.